the greatest.
Hey, you know JayRay got girls here going way.
Wow, welcome to another episode of Real Talk Radio. I'm here with one of the legendary professors here at my school, Dr. Dale Van Cantfort. I don't even know what your title is now that you're kind of part-time retired, so I'll hand that over to you.
The fancy name is Professor Emeritus.
Oh, okay.
What that really means is I'm an old guy who's a part-timer.
Okay. So DVC, from what you guys see from my social media, is one of the biggest reasons why I'm pretty decent at radio now. I think I started in 2022, and going forth, he's taught me everything I know. And then last year when he said he was going to retire, announced his retirement, I almost kind of cried. I was kind of sad. And then people reassured me that he was just going part-time. He was just retiring from full-time. And so I was like, that's good, because I would want to, when this ship sails, I wanted to be with DVC. So I thought that was pretty cool. And I told him I wanted him to come on my personal podcast, which a lot of people were in shock. I think I joked. People thought I was joking in Capstone when I said who would be my, if I had to interview one person, dead or alive, famous or not, who would it be? And I said DVC.
Checks in the mail.
Yeah. So DVC, this one is, my podcast is a little broad. We go every which way. I told you earlier, this one is more interview based a little bit. Like, we will have conversation probably through a lot, but this is more like over the years of things you said in class, and I kind of want to pick your brain about it.
Okay.
So the first thing I want to talk about is marriage. Because you've been married for how long again?
More than 50 years.
Exactly.
More than 50 years.
And that's kind of rare in our generation, and or in society, period, to be honest. So I had this audio clip, and it's some. He's a rapper. He's one of my favorite rappers, J. Cole.
No, I'm not a rapper.
And he talks about his perspective on marriage. I want to see if you agree with that.
Because
it kind of gives a tiny
but I look at
kind of
couples that,
I don't know how to explain it, but yeah, he says a couple of bad words, but he's a rapper, so yeah,
that's expected.
Yeah. Here he goes.
longest relationship you've been in, but I look at couples that's been married for a long time. And I know now from life experience that, like, man, that shit didn't always feel like it felt when y'all first met. That's not how it always felt. People get married thinking that, like, I'm meeting you and this shit feel like this and we on a high and I'm gonna marry you because, man, this shit been feeling like this for a year straight. I already know I got my person. It's gonna feel like this forever. Shit, that first year after you get married or 2 years after you get married and that shit don't feel the same, like, then it's like, damn, I guess we not supposed to be married. No. You got to now find a new way to fall in love with this person from this valley that y'all in. You got to find a way to get back to the peak. So what does that take? Man, we got to go on more dates. I got to listen more. I got to I got to turn this IG off because they keep suggesting all the baddest bitches. Like, I got to stop looking that way so I could just focus on this and appreciate what I got. Boom, boom. So similar to a relationship where you look at people that have been married 40, 50 years, like, how many times did they have to fall back in love with each other? How many times could they not stand each other within that 40, 50 years? And how many times did they say, you know what, instead of separating, we're going to make it work and I got to re-fall back in love with you. I don't know what the long...
So how do you agree with that, DVC? Because I think Joe came on here previously and said something about marriage it's a lot of work. It takes work.
It does take work. No doubt about that. One thing that I heard him say that I would reinforce is you've got to be a good listener. You've got to understand where your other half is coming from, where they are, how they're experiencing life, and how it affects both of you. And that goes both ways. So it is hard work. Got to listen. No doubt in the early days of our relationship, it was physical based. I was physically attracted to her. She was physically attracted to me. But for our marriage to work, it's got to be a lot more than that. We became life partners. And that takes time to develop that. And it takes a commitment to want to develop that. And we both had that commitment, and I'm glad we did. And we're life partners now. We keep kidding each other that I'm going to be the first to die. No, I'm going to be the first to die because we don't know how we're going to go on when one of us leaves this earth.
That's interesting because I saw something earlier on social media that's actually trending now. Steve Harvey said, I think he was asked a question about marriage, but they didn't share that part. But he said, in order for it to work, just don't say anything, just shut up. But it's almost like I get the joke, but a lot of people took it kind of serious. They took it more serious than what it was. But I think it goes into the opposite of what you were saying. Is communication is very important.
Very important, and I think that's what he's really going to say. When you're talking past each other, when you're both talking and not hearing each other, then that relationship begins to deteriorate. You've got to really concentrate and understand where your better half is coming from and where they are, and if they need help, be there, be that support person, and vice versa. When you need that support person, they've got your back.
Okay. And do you agree with J. Cole when he's saying you have to fall back in love? Because I do believe there's a thing where we do evolve, we change as people. And how we felt about one person during this time period, we don't feel about them in the future. Like, how would people work on that, per se?
That's a great question because I've never experienced it. I've never fallen out of love with my mate. Has that love changed over time? Yes. Like I said, early on it was, man, I'm really attracted to her physically, man. I want to get in those pants type situation. But that love grew into, I love her as a person, who she is, how she makes me a better person, how we're better together than we would be apart. I think that's probably what he's referring to is the appreciation of the other person matures and changes over time.
Okay. That's great to know. I just wanted to, let me clarify why I asked that. Because I am you would say a younger man. My peers would say an older man. I would say I'm just in between. But I am getting to that age where I'm about to graduate college. And this is where, the normal American begins his life with finding a spouse, getting married, having children. And I don't know, my mind is kind of tethering whether I even want marriage or whether I want kids or whether I just want to focus on my career and my path and making change in the world. So I just wanted to hear from the great DVC's advice. I never stuck. A lot of people seek advice from DVC in his office. I've been one of those students that's just never done it outside of radio.
Well, I will say this. I didn't go looking for love. I was still in love with basketball when I first met her. I wasn't out searching for someone, but once I met her, everything changed. There was something different about that relationship that I never had with any other individual, and I began to realize that, this is what love really is.
That's beautiful, DVC. Now, switching gears a little bit, I'm trying to bring back the old noggin. I believe this had more to do about competitive marketing within radio and going with the changes, like what's popular, what's not. And I believe throughout one of those stories, you said you had a cross burned in your yard. I believe it was because
we changed formats.
Yeah,
we changed formats. King Street, South Carolina, Williamsburg County.
King Street?
King Street, South Carolina, 35 miles inland from Myrtle Beach, Swamp Fox area. Williamsburg County at that time was 68.5% African American. We bought the AM/FM operation there. At that time on the FM, they were playing elevator music, the stuff you hear in the doctor's office, and they had country on the AM side. And 68.5% of the county is African American. We owned radio stations not because we liked certain music. It was a business for us. And the first thing you have to do is attract an audience. Well, how are we attracting an audience with beautiful music in Williamsburg County? We weren't. This was in the mid-'70s, 1977, in fact. And so we decided, my partner and I decided we need to change the format to attract an audience. And we went down to the local retail stores and said, who are your customers? Who are the people coming in? Or who are the people you need to grow your business? And it was the African-American community. So we decided to go with urban contemporary. That's what they called it back then. But it was a format that attracted an African-American audience. In the evening, we had a segment set aside for Black gospel because we were out in the sticks, out in the rural area, and there were still a lot of older African-Americans that was very important to them. So we had that. But to the older white gentlemen in the community that had owned businesses and whatnot, they used to play our beautiful music in the background just to have background music there. They were really upset that we changed formats. And I said, the only color that should make any difference to you is the color green. When you advertise on our station, those folks are going to come in and do business with you, trade dollars. But there were some rednecks in that community, probably still are today, that didn't like the fact that we changed that format. And I showed up at the radio station one evening, and there was a cross burning on our front yard of the radio station.
Wow. Well, what was your initial reaction?
Cowards.
Yeah.
If you got that problem, come see me.
Yeah.
Tell me about it. But nobody ever claimed the responsibility for it. We put the fire out and went on and just didn't pay any attention to it and didn't have any other problems.
I have two follow-up questions. Hopefully I remember the second one. But the first one is, with that background, because you were coming up in some crazy times, as I would describe it, what was something that your father told you or taught you about with race? Because it was a tricky subject growing up.
Definitely a very delicate subject.
Yeah.
But the conversation wasn't about race or color or creed. It was treat everybody else as you would like to be treated. It doesn't matter what color their skin is or what their religious background is or who their daddy is or isn't. Treat people as if they are a friend, someone you want to get to know, and treat them the way you expect to be treated. And that's the approach that was in my family. That's the approach I took with people. And playing sports helped me because from a very early stage, I was on the athletic field with people of different backgrounds, different cultures, different colors. They were my teammates. They were my competitors. So I had that to help me say, hey, this is normal. A lot of my white friends, the only black people they were around was the maid in their house or the garbage man that picked up their garbage. That's what they thought black people were. I grew up in the South, though my folks were from the North. We moved to the South when I was like 2 years old. We never had a maid.
Yeah.
We cleaned our own house. We didn't have a cook. We cooked our own food. So we didn't have that I'm better than you type mentality. Yeah.
Oh, wow. And then I guess my second follow-up question would be, comparing it to that, like you said earlier, you didn't see color, you only saw green because it's a business. At the end of the day, it wasn't a shot at, the people that were listening originally to whatever you guys were playing. It was a business move. Do you feel that way now that but when it comes to television broadcasting, a lot of people think there's a lot of LGBTQ movement within television, movies. And a lot of people think it's ruining cinema, especially, for example, like the MCU. And a lot of people think it's pushing an agenda. What would you tell those folks? Because I think I see it as, like you said, I think it's a business, and it's like you said, how could we grow more? What people are we missing? Maybe the LGBTQ community is what these companies are missing.
If I were developing film or TV content, video content, let it accurately reflect life. What I don't like, I pointed out to my wife last night, as a matter of fact, it's really you to ask this question. There was a McDonald's 30-second ad. What do they want to do? They want to sell their fast food services and their hamburgers and whatnot, but they went out of their way to make the people in there fit into one of those letters that you call out, LBGQ and so forth and so on. I guess to say that, hey, we recognize you or we want your business. I don't know. But they went out of their way to make that part of the ad. I think that's incorrect. What they should do is show real life as real life, and that it happens to include people from that category, fine. But to me, buying a hamburger or going to a movie or buying clothes has nothing to do with my racial preference, my sexual identity. So why should we make that forefront? It shouldn't be. And on the flip side, we shouldn't say, well, we can't show those people. No, we can, because that is part of life. We shouldn't shun them, but we shouldn't try to say, oh, everybody is this way, because everybody isn't that way.
Yeah. I guess it's kind of a similar question, but more specific. because this is where I hear a lot of people get kind of sensitive about it with cartoons specifically because with kids and like books, like children books. That's where I've heard a lot of the backlash is coming from.
Again, if it is part of the actual storyline, fine. But if they're putting it in there just to put it in there, then no. But let's say the storyline is just like, let's use Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer because we're in the Christmas season. Okay, he was rejected because he was different until they needed that red nose, and then he was a hero, right? So the storyline was he was rejected because he was different. Well, if you're doing another children's story and they're being rejected because of their sexual preference, then that makes perfectly good sense. But if the story is about something else, but you throw that in just to say, oh, we recognize you people, then I say that's not right. So if the story is to show, hey, let's be inclusive, there's a place for everybody, then fine. But if you're just throwing in there to say, oh, I recognize these people, I think that is an improper use of it.
Okay. Interesting take. Now we're going to shift a little bit further again. So I took comm law class with you. Not one of my favorite classes because it does feel more, I know it's more mass media based, but it's also a lot of other laws that go into other subjects. But it was for the most part interesting, and I feel like, I don't know what other classes you've had, but I do feel like our class was a lot more interested than any of your other classes. But you can speak on that because it was a lot of times where Chloe would say something or Sophie would say something, and you kind of just let us talk amongst each other of how we feel. And I always found that interesting, even though I didn't say anything. But I did see this. It was something else on Instagram that I wanted to get your take on because you are very knowledgeable of not just mass media law, but law in general that I learned. And this was a North Carolina man. He was wrongfully imprisoned for 44 years in a rape case, and now he's receiving $25 million settlement. So my question to you, DVC, is, do you believe money can compensate time? Like, do you think that's fair? Or if you were in power or in that position to make it right, what do you think is the appropriate, I don't know, because you can't really get time back, but what would you do? What was the choice you would make? What do you think is fair?
A tough question, a tough one to answer. There is no way to compensate somebody properly for losing half their life or spending 20 years in prison when they shouldn't have spent time in prison. So about the only mechanism you have for that is monetary. You can give them some money, but can that buy back those years? No, it can't. Can that buy back seeing their grandkids grow up or whatnot? No, it can't. What it can do possibly is serve as a deterrent from somebody being overzealous in the prosecution of the next individual that just so happens to fit that stereotype. Oh, yeah, they were that color of skin. Oh, they're about that size. Oh, they came from that sort of background. That must be them. Instead of just rushing to that judgment saying, no, time out. Let's look at this further because if we get it wrong, it's going to really cost us in the pocketbook. But is there any way to properly compensate those people who have been wrongly imprisoned? Unfortunately, no, there's not. We don't have a way to go back in time.
Yeah. Now shifting on a lighter note, how would you describe your experience having me as a student?
Having JayRay as a student, highly intelligent individual, at times poorly motivated, at times distracted because he's trying to do too many things at one time, at times taking courses that he's saying to himself, I'm only taking this because it's required of me, so I'm not going to put much energy into it. But when JayRay sets his mind to doing something, he can be very, very good at it. Your documentary is an example. Your radio shows you've certainly grown as a radio personality. You probably came in thinking, oh, yeah, this is easy. And as you begun to work at it, you realize to really be good at it, you've got to hone that craft. You got to do it time and time again, and in little increments get better here, get better there. And can you constantly improve in this business? Yes, you can.
Thank you, DVC. I appreciate that. A lot of those I've already knew you were going to say that. I told people you were going to say that. But can you go more in depth about where you think my strengths are? And then you can only guess the follow-up would be more in depth of what I can improve on going forward.
Your strengths are your desire to want to get better. You have to have that. I've seen a lot of people have potential but not have the desire. I'd rather have somebody have the desire and less potential. I've seen too many with potential and they're just lazy and don't do it. You're getting close to, you're not quite there yet, but you're getting close to a point of having to decide professionally, what do I want to do for the next 10, 20 years? It's not realistic to think I can be elite as a on-air personality and elite in documentary production at the same time. You're going to have to make a decision. I think you can be elite in either one of them, but trying to be elite at both of them at the same time is a recipe for failure. So somewhere in the near future, I'm not talking days or even weeks or months, but somewhere in the next couple of years, you need to decide which route you want to go in and then be dedicated to it. Set a 3, 5, 10-year goal. In 3 years, I want to be doing this. 5 years, I want to be doing this. 10 years from now, I want to be doing that. I did that right after I graduated college. A good friend of mine sat me down and said, professionally, you need to sit down and come up with some goals. Where you want to be 3 years from now, 5 years, 10 years from now. Write it down. And do the same thing with your personal life. Where do you want to be 3, 5 years, 10 years from now personally? Because those are two different things, professional life and personal life. And you need to make time for both of them. But I think you can be whatever you want to be. My personal bias is on the radio side because I can see a clear path for you there. I don't see the clear path right now, probably because I don't know enough about it, on the documentary side, because it's really two-pronged. You can be a great producer of content, but if you don't have an underwriter, if you don't have the money to back you up, you can't do all the things you want to do. And that requires going out and selling your concepts to someone, finding that sugar daddy that buys into your idea and will back you. And that takes a certain skill level that you may have, may not. I don't know. I'm much more in tune to your personality side, and I know that you can, if you want to, willing to stick with it and have a plan, you can be elite on the air.
Thank you, DVC. What are some areas that you think I can improve upon going forward into my future career?
You've already gotten some better at this, but be humble. Learn from everybody. Ask lots of questions. Avoid making the same mistake 2, 3, or 4 times. Learn each time that you do. Be open to constructive criticism, getting feedback from a variety of different people. Realize you're getting to the point now where it's an art form. You have mastered the basic science part of it, turning the switches, using the mic properly and whatnot. Now you get into the art part of it. And what does that mean? That means that you go and ask DVC, listen to my air check, and he goes, man, that's great, you're doing great. And you ask somebody else, and they go, but you ought to be doing this, you ought to be doing that. Because now you get in the art part, because one person looks at that painting and says it's a great painting. Somebody else looks at it and goes, that doesn't do anything for me. You're getting to that point now with your presentation on the air. Some people are going to say, hey, man, he is really good. Another guy, he's dime a dozen. He's just like everybody else. It all depends on what you're looking for and what that station owner wants or what that station manager wants or that program director wants. And that's the art part of it. And so you have to sell yourself. First, you got to figure out what it is they want and see if you can deliver that for them.
Thanks, DVC. I thought he was going to throw in a punctuality stinger there, but
you're going to be late for your own funeral.
It wouldn't feel right if you didn't throw it in there. I guess the last question, DVC, is what's a piece of advice you've received in your career that has stuck with you?
Do something professionally that you are passionate about. we're going to have to work anywhere from 35 to 50 years in our lifetime. I'm into my 53rd year of full-time, now going part-time. So I did 52 years of full-time work. Man, if I was having to show up to punch a clock for 52 years, I couldn't have done it. I ran radio stations for 25 years, enjoyed the heck out of doing that. Were there frustrating days? Yes. But I popped up out of the bed every morning excited about going to work. When I started to lose some of that excitement, that's when I started to say, do I want to do this for another 25 years, or do I want to look around at something else? And that's when I discovered that I was fairly good at higher ed and being an instructor. And I became passionate about that, and I changed careers. A lot of people called me crazy. What are you doing? Late 40s changing careers. Well, I wanted to be passionate about whatever I was doing for the next 25 years. And I was afraid that I was starting to lose that passion on the radio side because I was kind of getting in a routine of same old. And so I made that change. So my life lesson to you is find something you're passionate about. Do it as long as you're passionate about it. And if you begin to lose that passion, then find something else that you can be passionate about, because we got to have a reason to wake up every morning.
Wow. Dang, DVC. Well, I want to appreciate you for taking the time out of your busy schedule, for coming on my platform and giving me advice and let me pick your brain a lot. And DVC, I just want to say, this is why I didn't do it on stage. I don't want to do my thank yous during capsule. I knew I would have got emotional like Chloe did. I'm a bit of a more uglier crier than she is, so I did not want to do that. But I do appreciate you, DVC. I don't say it a lot, but I know ever since I shook your hand at, I think it was Mass Comm Day when I first met you, I knew this was the beginning of a great relationship, because I just knew from that handshake, it was a kind of a spiritual feeling. I knew you were going to help me get to where I wanted to go, and I truly do appreciate you, DVC.
Good enough. I appreciate you. Appreciate the efforts you put in. I'm looking forward to seeing great things from you in the future.
Yes, sir. So that concludes this episode. I want to thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you like, comment, subscribe. We are on Instagram, real.t.radio. We're on TikTok, Real Talk Radio with 2 O's. And hit us up in the emails, realtalkradio626@gmail.com. Signing out is DVC and JayRay on Real Talk Radio.